Okay, so good morning, students. Let us,
Good morning, ma'am.
yeah, good morning. So we'll proceed from where we stopped in the previous class. We were discussing the Romantic movement in general and looking specifically at William Blake and asking ourselves questions regarding his acceptance in the Romantic canon. Why, for a very long time, he was not considered as a major Romantic poet. He, along with the historians of literature, generally gave recognition only to the first generation and the second generation of Romantic poets, beginning with Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey, to uh, Shelley, Keats, and Byron. And it was not always that Blake was recognized. It was only much later that he was considered as somebody who actually ushered in the Romantic movement through his works much before many of the other Romantic writers did. And you just cannot cover English literature, the history of English poetry, without discussing the work of William Blake, a person who generally was recognized as a lunatic during his own lifetime. That was the word that was often used to describe him. He was called, and he was an isolated figure and a lunatic, considered as a madman or a lunatic, and for which reason, during his own lifetime and for many years afterwards also, his works did not get their due recognition. So just to remind ourselves of where we had stopped, I'll just read a section from, on the Romantic movement in general, and so that we are enabled to make the link between these remarks on Romantic poetry and the poetry of William Blake, which we will be discussing in the light of two of his poems, The Lamb and The Tiger. Okay, so I'll just read one or two lines. Romanticism was ultimately a critical analysis of the modern condition, modern in the sense of contemporary, the late 17th and early 18th century condition, the condition that was colored and influenced by the rapid changes ushered in by not just the French and the French Revolution and other revolutions for independence, but also the social changes that were ushered in by the Industrial Revolution. So it was, Romanticism can be considered as a rejection of and a critical analysis, a revolt against the previous age, a critical analysis of the modern condition, as well as a political critique. So it's not just all Romanticism and all poetry and all lyrical, passionate intensity that flows through the works of the Romantic writers. You have a strong political critique also in their works. They just use a different language to offer their critique. So it was a strong political critique. The growth of a new reading public, with the introduction of the printing press and the publication of a large number of works at the same time, the same work being published in the form of many number of copies. So and the establishment of educational institutions which spread to other sections of the society rather than only the aristocratic elite as it was in the past. The growth of a new reading public made the authors free from aristocratic patronage that they had earlier depended on. So you have a kind of liberating air there as well. They did not have to depend on aristocratic patronage. And the freedom to express individual views also gave the impetus to Romanticism. The awareness of radical change, the breakdown of an old agrarian economy, from that pastoral, feudal, pastoral society, you move to an industrial, a mechanized society. The awareness of radical change, the breakdown of an old agrarian economy and monarchical government, the advent of machines dominating men's lives, the emerging importance of cities, people moving from the villages to the cities, the emerging importance of cities, all of these go to feed the current of Romanticism. The need for the individual to assert his humanity and his helplessness in the face of these changes was one of the major impulses behind Romanticism. This romantic individualism, coupled with radical ideas opposing monarchical and state absolutism, went to create the special temper of the age. So, for the moment, we will discuss that special temper of the age in the light of the poems of William Blake, particularly his collection, The Songs of Innocence and Experience. Just allow me to get the presentation ready so that we can understand the lines better. Yeah, so this is where we had stopped. We talked about the Songs of Innocence published in 1789, and then the Songs of Experience which came in 1792. But together he published the two volumes in the form of the Songs of Innocence and Experience in 1794. Remember, all of this is much before the publication of the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads or the Romantic Manifesto, the preface written by William Shakespeare. So, no, you just cannot enter the world of Blake's poetry without talking about his contributions as an engraver, as an artist, as a person who developed the technique of illuminated printing. We need to talk about the metallic plates on which he composed his poems, and you just cannot separate the poems from the paintings. So these sketches and the lines, they form a kind of harmonious whole, and to do justice to Blake's poetry, you need to do to refer to both the pictures, the music, and the lines. All that, that kind of harmony is something that you can consider as a major feature of Blake's poetry, especially in the Songs of Innocence. Therefore, let us begin by gazing at the pictures that accompany these volumes. The Songs of Innocence there, the volume that he wrote in the year published in 1798. You can see that picture. Let me try to magnify that image for you. Yeah, it is, as I told you, naturally the picture has aged with the years. It's many centuries since he must have etched this, but what you see there is a brilliant scene in an orchard, a scene set in the world of nature with a lot of greenery all around and a tree that is in full bloom. You have flowers, you have the leaves, it is naturally the season of spring that is depicted there, with the sun shining brilliantly out there, the grass twinkling and green, the birds flying in the sky, and you find a lot of little cherubic figures, angelic figures, including a piper. The piper there is a significant figure in the Songs of Innocence. You can see the image of the piper, little piper, alongside the letter I of innocence. And gaining or gathering our attention, there is the image of a woman, probably the mother of the two children seen there, or maybe a nurse. Anyway, somebody who has succeeded in gaining the attention of the children. Isn't that so? They are engaged, deeply engrossed in something. They're leaning on her lap, and she probably has a book, a story book or something, out from which she's reading out a story, and you have the little children very keenly listening to her in rapt attention. And all around, there is the scene of happiness, joy, peace, and a general sense of harmony that pervades the whole scene. So this is something that characterizes all the songs that come in this collection. The first of which is that all of them present the world of childhood. innocence is presented in these songs or in these poems as the perspective of the child, the clear, unsullied, uncomplicated, very clear stream of a child's thought is what is seen depicted in the songs of innocence. Everything is seen from the child's perspective, and in keeping with the child's vocabulary, which you can imagine would be a very limited one, these songs contain a very limited number of words. Many of the words get repeated, and all of these words are ones that you would always associate with happiness, with the very happy sides of nature and of life. You would have, somebody is trying to get in. Yeah, so you would have words like the sun, lambs, birds, flowers, the river, the stream, then mother, and all the pleasant words, words that you would associate with nature, words that you would associate with a happy life, get repeated in the songs of innocence. And we would be able to appreciate best the spirit of the songs of innocence when you contrast it with the next collection, the songs of experience, which came a few years after that, initially in 1792. Just look at the illustration that accompanies the frontispiece, the first page of the songs of experience, and you see the world of difference. From the world of nature, from the world outside, you move indoors. You move to a more constricted space. You move to a more limited space, which is darker. Contrast the brightness, the brilliant sunshine of the first scene with the darkness of the second scene. That is the first impression you gather when you look at the songs of experience and the constricted space. You also notice that the children have grown up. They have become late teenagers, and you can see that they are covering their face here in great despondency or sorrow. Unlike the very keen and interested, happy look on their faces in the songs of innocence, here the children seem to be covering their face in sorrow, because obviously they are faced with the reality of death. You can find two prone bodies there, probably the dead bodies of their parents. Anyway, these are children who have grown up and have got exposed to the reality of life. The fact that life is not just a bed of roses, that life is not just the spring babbling by and the lambs frisking on sunny meadows, but that life is also about death, about pain, about suffering, and about separation. So the children are no longer the innocent ones. They are experienced. Life has brought their way a lot of experiences, and their world is now, their vision is now colored by sorrow, by pain, and generally by experience. So that is how the brilliance and the sunlit scene gives way to the darker shades of the songs of experience. And in keeping with the more adult, in keeping with the more experienced world of the people here, you find that the vocabulary also changes. You move to more complex words, more complex images. The words and images are of a very limited and very childlike nature in the songs of innocence, but here they are of a deeper, of a more mature, of a more painful nature. And you find that you just cannot listen to these songs or read these songs and leave them at that. Each line is open up for discussion, for depth, for recollection, for reflection, and for rumination. There's so much, the intensity of the lines is magnified in these lines. Whereas in the songs of innocence, exactly as it is with children, they speak what they mean. there is no guile in their world, there is no craft, there is no word play in the world of childhood. Whereas the more mature you become, the more you grow up, the more you realize the many-sidedness of language, the many-sidedness of life, and so on. That life is not what it appears to be. And that precisely is what is conveyed in the Songs of Innocence through, images from the other side of life. You have here the images of restriction, the images of pain, the images of suffering, and instead of the bright and the happy scenes of nature, what you have here is the other side of nature: thunder, lightning, the deep forest, darkness, all that you would associate with the unpleasant side of nature. These are the images that are used in the Songs of Experience. And you can just take a look at the combined volume which came with this image, the Songs of Innocence and Experience. You have two Adam and Eve kind of figures there who naturally seem to be suffering a great deal in those hellish fires. They are exposed, they are vulnerable, and they do not even want to show their face. It's in guilt or shame or embarrassment or fear or some such emotion because of which they seem to have stooped low and covered their faces. But at the same time, you cannot also miss the line that has now come into the combined collection. The Songs of Innocence was called just that, the Songs of Innocence. But when you come to the combined collection, you find a line from Blake written there, Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the two contrary sides of the human soul. Showing is spelled differently, Shewing, that was the more commonly used spelling of those times. But the important fact is that it was Blake's intention to show the two contrary states of the human soul. The fact that life is not just happiness, but that life has its other side too, is what he wanted to show. And it's not as if he's making a value judgment and prioritizing one over the other. It is not, right on our parts to do that, Blake seems to convey. We need to accept the fact that life has both its ups and downs, its happiness and its sorrows. So these contrary states of the human soul, he wanted to convey that. And as he has himself said in one of his other poems, without contraries, there is no progression. So that is what takes life forward. And that is probably what he wanted to convey through the combined collection. Anyway, we'll just take a look at some of the other differences that one can make out in these two collections. Just two reviews, observations about Blake. I have already told you how he was scarcely noticed in his own lifetime. No contemporary reviewed any of his works in illuminated printing, but it was much later. He was, as I told you, considered as an unfortunate lunatic. And it was only much later that he was discovered by writers, by critics, and by historians. I'll tell you what more you can read about Blake to get a better idea about later, the impression of later reviewers on the work of William Blake. But now we will focus on the poems that we have to study. The Songs of Innocence, as I told you, published in 1789. It was Blake's first demonstration of illuminated printing, this unique technique that he created to publish both text and hand-colored illustration together. The harmony between the two is something that you just cannot miss, and something that highlights the Songs of Innocence too. Is an important feature of the Songs of Innocence. And the rhythmic subtlety and delicate beauty of both his lyrics and his designs create a rare kind of harmony on the metallic sheets and on his pages. So he composed many of these poems. He also borrowed quite liberally from the available ballads and rhymes for children, and to create some of the purest rhymes in the lyrics in the English language. And it is clear that these are poems that have a child as the speaker, that have a child's perspective, and these are songs written for children. And as I told you, we have little words, small words, limited number of words and small words, no complicated imagery here, no complicated terminology, no complicated vocabulary. They represent the innocent little children from babies to beetles, protected and fostered by powers beyond their own. But when you move to the combined volume of Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the two contrary states of the human soul, published in 1794, you kind of see the Songs of Innocence being rearranged now. And these poems reflect Blake's views that experience brings the individual into conflict with rules, moralism, and repression. These are the kind of things that you begin to encounter as you become more mature, as you become older, as you grow older, and as you become more experienced. You find barriers erected in your way always. And this can in many ways be seen as a reflection also of the move from the agrarian pastoral life that people led till then to the industrialized mechanized life, and the kind of anxiety that people would have experienced in their minds regarding the new changes being ushered in, regarding the twist that life was going to experience with this kind of mechanization where people would probably lose their control over themselves. That can be seen reflected in the scenes as you move from innocence to experience. So the more mechanized life becomes, the more your life is going to be regulated. You do not any longer have the beautiful landscape of the pastoral scenes of the agrarian life that you were blessed to live till then. The woods and forests are now going to be cut down, and in its place you will have factories. So the sites of production begin to change from the forest. They already had changed when it became the fields, which were cultivated. But from the fields now, you are again going to move into a more restricted space in the form of the factories and workshops. And you find a kind of bitterness and even a little bit of anger, a little bit of sorrow, and a great deal of anxiety embedded in these poems. Most of them are in fact ironic replies to the poems of the earlier volume. As I will explain to you in the next slide, each one of the songs in the Songs of Experience is a kind of companion poem to similar poems in the Songs of Innocence. And it is the same subject, the same theme, the same object, the same situation, often viewed from both these angles, the perspective of children and the perspective of adults. So you can think of the lamb and the tiger, the two key images in the poems prescribed for our study, as images that symbolize these two works. The lamb can be considered as the archetypal or the key symbol of innocence, and in the Experience volume you can think of the tiger spelled differently. You will notice, we'll explain why it could be spelled differently. And the tiger epitomizes the world of experience. The tiger as the embodiment of energy, strength, lust, anger, aggression, fierce passion, and so on. And what you have in the Songs of Innocence would be the threatened, unprotected souls in despair. You have moved a great distance from the protected, innocent world of childhood to a world that is threatened, a world that is unprotected, and one that is thrown into despair. Just look at these two introductory poems, three in fact. One, the introduction on the left is the introductory poem in the Songs of Innocence, and in all these, in fact, the shepherd and the echoing rain. Just read a few lines from each one. So introduction, piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he laughing said to me, pipe a song about a lamb. So I piped with merry cheer. Piper, pipe that song again. So I piped, and we wept to hear. He is very happy to listen to my songs. Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe, sing thy songs of happy cheer. So I sung the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. So this is the kind of, words that you have there, the rhythm of the songs, that lilting, rhythm, very, very playful kind of, exactly reflecting a child's word. You will notice the many alliterations, just as in the alliteration is something that brings in a lot of pleasantness into poetry, and that is exactly what you can think of as characteristic of the child's world. And pervading the whole poem is an air of happiness, of joy, the kind of life where you can sing happily and merrily. And look at the relationship between the child and the piper. The child requests the piper to pipe songs, and in a very benevolent mood. The piper is all too willing to oblige the child. There is never a question of any refusal here. There is never any question of a question remaining unanswered. The world of children would always be full of questions, but there would somebody to answer those questions. Whereas it is not the same with the world of adults. Read the remaining lines yourself. Similarly, the next two poems, The Shepherd and The Echoing Green. How sweet is the shepherd's sweet lot, from the morn to the evening he strays. He shall follow his sheep all the day, and his tongue shall be filled with praise. There is only praise for the world, and it seems to be a limitless landscape that you have there, which is all sunlit and green and pleasant and open. There are no walls that restrict anyone here. There is a lot of gaiety, there is a great deal of tenderness. On the echoing green, the sun does arise and make happy the skies. The merry bells ring to welcome the spring. The skylark and thrush, the birds of the bush, sing louder around to the bell's cheerful sound, while our spouts shall be seen on the echoing green. So, visualize the landscape against these three poems are said, and you can imagine, or you can be sure that it is the same landscape that you have in the rest of the poems in the Songs of Innocence too. We'll see how different the scene becomes when you go to the Songs of Experience. To do which, as I told you, let us look at three sample pieces. I told you, most of the songs in Songs of Experience are companion pieces to similar poems in the Songs of Innocence. And a classical case, apart from, of course, the lamb and the tiger that we have to study, would be the one on the blossom. There is a poem on a flower in both the Innocent collection and the Experience collection. Look at the image and also listen to the lines, the blossom. Merry, merry sparrow, under leaves so green, a happy blossom sees you, swift as arrow, seek your cradle narrow near my bosom. Pretty, pretty robin, under leaves so green, a happy blossom hears you sobbing, sobbing. Pretty, pretty robin, near my bosom. All the features that I mentioned earlier, the onomatopoeic lines, the lines of alliteration, the greenery, the flowers, the happiness, the joy, the gaiety all around, that is captured very beautifully in the angelic world of the blossom. Even without seeing the picture, and even without knowing that this comes in the Songs of Innocence collection, look at the lines and the images there would convince you as to which collection it belongs to. But that is not the case with the next one, which is called The Sick Rose. Even in the title, you find that change. The blossom has become a sick rose now. You are moving into a world of sickness and pain and suffering. Look at the images. Look at the pictures there in that plate. O rose, thou art sick. So the flower here has become worm eaten. The invisible worm that flies in the night. Again, invisibility. In the child's world, everything is visible. Things that you can see with your eye, hear with your ears, touch with your hands, taste with your mouth, and generally feel. You can smell. Everything is in the world of physical perception. There is nothing that is hidden. There is nothing that remains unrevealed. Whereas in the world of innocence, everything goes into those deeper levels. Concepts like the invisibility comes in, which is something that would be totally foreign to the child's world. The child can only see what is visible. He or she is not even aware of the concept of the invisible. That is a concept that you become familiar with as you mature and you realize that what is seen is not the end of everything. What you see is not the end of everything. O rose, thou art sick. The invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy. There is a kind of somebody encroaching into someone else's territory, a kind of attack. You know, these kind of power plays again belong only to the world of adulthood. You do not have that kind of struggle for power, the fight, the resistance. None of these are present in the world of innocence. You know, the kind of change that would have been ushered into social relations with the establishment of factories, with the concept of ownership coming in. You know, it is with the capitalist system that you begin to experience the concept of ownership. And that new change is something that you can experience in the songs of experience. So that flies in the night in the howling storm has found out thy bed of crimson joy. And again, you know, the word joy is not pure, unalloyed joy. It is marked with crimson. Crimson is again a color that you associate with embarrassment, with fear. You go red with shame and fear and so on. It is not the beautiful rosy hue. It has a darker, deeper level and various associations embedded in it. And his dark secret love does thy life destroy. You know, something that can destroy, something that is destructive, something that is dark and secret. A word like love would never be thought of as dark and secret in the world of childhood. But here, you know, so many, each word there, each concept there, each image there is open to so many levels of meaning. That is one contrast that you can make between the songs of innocence and experience. We'll just look at two more. One would be Nurse's Song. You have the same title being used in both the collections. There is a Nurse's Song in the Songs of Innocence and a Nurse's Song in the Songs of Experience too. Again, look at the two images in the world of nature, the outdoors in the first collection, a restricting space in the second collection, with a woman who seems to have greater control over the child. And that seems to be the attitude of the speakers in the two poems. Of course, it is a nurse who is a speaker, a lady who is entrusted with the job of looking after the children. Let's read the Nurse's Song of Innocence first. It is the one on the right actually, that is the Innocent collection, which is smaller. Nurse's Song. When the voices of children are heard on the green and whisperings, this is the one. When voices of children, on the one on the left only, when voices of children are heard on the green and laughing is heard on the hill, my heart is at rest within my breast and everything else is still. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down and the dews of night arise. So here is the nurse who is telling the children, it's nightfall and therefore you must go home. Let us all go home. It's time for you to stop playing. Come, come, leave off play and let us away till the morning appears in the skies. You know, it's not a full stop that she puts to the children's playing. She tells them, you can stop playing for the moment, let's go home and sleep. And tomorrow, when the morning appears in the skies, there is hope, you know, you can come back and play. But here, it is not just the nurse who is the speaker. The nurse, you know, has the kind of relationship with the children where the children respond to the nurse. And what do they say? No, no, let us play, for it is yet day and we cannot go to sleep. You know, they don't want to stop playing. They want to continue playing. Besides, in the sky, the little birds fly and the hills are all covered with sheep. You know, there is always that sense of oneness that the children feel in the songs of innocence with the world outside. If the birds are still flying in the sky and the sheep are still frisking about on the meadows, then why shouldn't we continue to play? You know, they think of themselves as the birds, the free birds, and the playful little sheep, the little lambs. There is no difference. So in every song of the songs of innocence, that beautiful harmony, that sense of a union, of a unity of all beings, that unity of being, that sense of a common, what shall you say, lot that unites everything is seen. You know, that harmoniousness is something that you just cannot avoid noticing in these songs. So they feel that they have every right to continue playing. And then the nurse, she's a very gentle person who's very, she is very in a very permissive mood. She allows the children. She lets go. It's not a very strict nurse that you have here. Here is a nurse who understands the needs of the children and then says, well, go and play till the light fades away and then go home to bed. She does not say till it is dark and dangerous. No, she says till the light fades away. What fades away has the possibility of becoming brighter again, and then go home to bed. The little ones leaped and shouted and laughed, and all the hills echoed. So that sense of ringing joy, echoing joy is again characteristic of the songs of innocence. Whereas look at the abrupt lines of the nurse's song in Innocence. Here is a nurse who's very authoritarian, who's very strict, and who does not allow the children to voice their opinion. When the voices of children are heard on the green and whisperings are in the dale, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind, my face turns green and pale. When she looks at the children playing, she is reminded of some bitter experience that she herself had when she was in a vulnerable state of mind. And my own youth, she does not say childhood, she is reminded of her youth and thinking of that uncomfortable situation which she must have experienced, her face turns green and pale. You know, again there is something that is mysterious, something that is fearful, something that about which she is definitely not happy. She recalls, you know, the children live in the present. They do not carry the baggage of the past. They are not worried about the future. They celebrate the present, as do the other beings in the world of nature. Whereas here, the nurses carries the heavy burden of the past. You know, that is something that is part and parcel of the adult world. So she says in a very authoritarian manner, then come home, my children, the sun has gone down and the dews of night arise. Your spring and your day are wasted in play, and your winter and night in disguise. You know, look at all the strangeness that comes in there. You're simply wasting your life by playing like this, and your winter and night are in disguise. By playing now, you will just add to the worries of the winter and the night. So there's nothing very happy, there's nothing very promising, there's nothing very beautiful about what the nurse tells the children regarding life. Okay? It's only bitterness, it is only shame, it is only fear that awaits you. So better not waste your time playing now. So these are two worlds apart, the nurse in the songs of innocence and the nurse in the songs of experience. I'll just choose one more set pair like this, and then we'll go to the lamb and the tiger. So this is the Holy Thursday poem, which again, you have two poems with the same title. Holy Thursday is a special celebration, in the world of Christianity, the 3 days before the Easter or the day before prior to Good Friday, a day that is spent in prayer. And the scene here is the orphanage. Blake had, all the Romantic poets of course were very much obsessed with the world of childhood. In Blake's case, he was also, as a person living in the city of London, he, unlike Wordsworth and Coleridge, who lived mostly in the Lake District, Blake was a person who lived in London, and he was exposed to the city, which developed. The Lake District was pristine and natural and unaffected for a much longer period of time. Even now it remains, it maintains its natural beauty. You can see pictures of Lake District now, the kind of world that Wordsworth and Coleridge inhabited. But Blake, living in the city of London, could see all the evils that urbanization brought with it. And one space where he saw that was the orphanage, that was run by the government, the city authorities, attached to St. Paul's Cathedral in London. You have this orphanage, children whose parents have either died or have abandoned them. And the image of these children on this particular day, on Holy Thursday, these children are dressed in new clothes and then taken to St. Paul's Cathedral, where they sing a choir. They participate in the prayer service. The children form the choir and they sing hymns in praise of the Lord on Holy Thursday. Look at the images of the same ritual in both these poems. In the Innocent collection, it was on a Holy Thursday, their innocent faces clean. The children have been scrubbed clean and they are given a new set of colorful clothes. The children walking two and two in red and blue and green. You can see the children being marched to St. Paul's Cathedral with the authorities walking in front of them in the first image there. Grey-headed beadles walked before, the authorities with wands as white as snow. They have sticks in their hands, but the sticks seem harmless. They are almost magical. He does not say rulers or sticks. He uses the word wands, something that you associate with magicians. And these people seem to have a kind of magical effect upon the children, with wands as white as snow, till into the high dome of Paul's, they like Thames waters flow. So they have been taken into St. Paul's Cathedral, with its huge high dome and so on. The children are now being compared to the waters of the river Thames, which flows by the city of London. Again, the comparison is with the imagery is drawn from the world of nature. Even in the city of London, to describe the children and their movement, you have the poet using images from the world of nature. Till into the high dome of Paul's, they like Thames waters flow. Oh, what a multitude they seemed, these flowers of London town. These children, they are being described as the flowers of London town. Even in that urban space, you have these flowers, and you look at the children and you get insights into that world of nature. Seated in companies, they sit with radiance all their own. They're glowing on that particular day. The hum of multitudes was there, but multitudes of lamps. You can hear, a lot as they sing, and there's a loud sound that comes, and it's a multitude of lamps. There's something very pleasant about their singing, like the bleating of lambs. Thousands of little boys and girls raising their innocent hands, as they sing and they pray, they raise their innocent hands. And now, like a mighty wind, they raise to heaven the voice of song. As they sing, their hymns reach the very heavens, or like harmonious thunderings, the seats of heaven among. Beneath them sit the aged men, wise guardians of the poor. Then cherish pity, lest you drive an angel from the door. So here you have these wise guardians, the elderly people who are in charge of the orphanage, and they seem to have a very benign attitude towards the children, a very loving attitude. They seem to take care of them and they think of them ultimately as angels. At least it may be for their own sake, but at least they seem to treat the children well. So that is the impression that you get in the innocent collection, whereas when you come to the experience collection, is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? You know, it begins with a question, and you will find that in most of the experience songs, you have lines and lines of questions, but very often there are no answers given. In the songs of innocence, a lot of questions are asked, but the questions are always answered. Here, is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? Babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and usurious hands. You know, the little children are reduced to misery here, and the people who feed them are usurious. You know, they are selfish people who are doing this for their own needs. They are cold, they are usurious. They do not consider the children as angels. They are doing this only to advance their own cause. Is that trembling cry a song? Contrast the song of the children in the earlier collection and the song in this collection. This sounds like a trembling cry. It cannot even be considered as a song. Can it be a song of joy and so many children poor? It is a land of poverty, and their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. You know, look at the bare fields, the thorns. The winter, it is eternal winter there. For wherever the sun does shine and wherever the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there, nor poverty the mind appall. So this is a world that appalls the mind, you know, that disgusts the mind, that fills the mind with fear and disgust when you see the little children so steeped in poverty, hunger and pain. I think these three pairs would do to give you an insight into the world of contrast or the contrary states of the human soul that we will now encounter in The Lamb and the Tiger. Look at the landscape, look at the setting, look at the characters, look at the imagery, you know, the flower-laden trees and creepers and the world of nature in the little child with a little cottage and the child playing with the lambs, many of them, you know, and they belong to the same beautiful plain. There is no difference between the child and the lambs there. Whereas you come to the figure of authority, as I told you, it is capitalism and the owner, a person who owns the means of production, a person who owns others. That kind of concept comes in when life becomes more and more mechanized and capitalist. From the world of a sunlit meadow, you come to a dark forest where the tree doesn't seem to be a beautiful tree full of flowers. You know, the tree seems to be rather bare, but it is clear that it is a forest scene. And even though the tiger there does not look like a majestic or a ferocious tiger as is described in the song, you still realize that it is the voice, you know, it is an image there, or it is a figure that conveys a sense of authority, a sense of menace, a source of danger, somebody there in isolation, unlike the companionship that you find in the first collection. We'll just read, I think it's almost time for us to stop. We'll discuss the two poems in the next class, but I think we can wind up today's class by just reading these two poems, The Lamb and the Tiger. Yeah, the lamb. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and over the mead. Gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? This is the question asked by the child, and he gives the answers. Little lamb, I'll tell thee. Little lamb, I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child. I a child and thou a lamb, we are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. That is the little lamb. Whereas, let us look at the tiger, again spelled differently to add to the sense of remoteness. That is why the tiger is spelled like that. Tiger, tiger, burning bright. The rhythm changes, as does the landscape, the meter, the vocabulary, the imagery. In the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? It begins with a question and ends with the same unanswered question. Okay, you can ponder over those lines and we will meet tomorrow. Okay, I'll stop the recording and the presentation. Okay, please reflect over these and